Like moths to a flame, you've thrown caution to the wind for a glimpse into our world. Well, now you're in it.
Welcome to Effed Up Stories.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Effed Up Stories. I am your host, Will Pender.
And I am your co-host, Ryan Sharp.
And tonight we are looking at a very strange story involving strange disappearances with aliens. This is actually going to be it's a custom podcast, and we're doing this, and he doesn't want me to use a surname. We're going to call him Marcus. As you know, we did donations there not too long ago so that we could get back up on our feet. You guys donated, and we got our new audio interface. And, we sent out thank you packages to the donators. And the top 3 donators, of course, we're doing custom podcasts for.
Thank you very much, Marcus. And this one's for you.
Well, now I'm going to, we gave the donators, the top donators, a list of what they could do. So for Marcus, he wanted us to do a podcast, he said, either on strange disappearances or alien abductions and or encounters. So I thought it would be interesting, and I ran this by him to do it on strange disappearances involving aliens, right? Kind of combine them together to make this a unique topic all in its own. And I also gave Marcus, he could put in a custom message, and so I'm going to read that now. And I do know that we have some wrestling fans out there. I'm not all up on it, but I'm sure that you fans of wrestlers will kind of get this, I guess. Marcus would like me to read. I would like to dedicate this episode to John Cena. John Cena is love. John Cena is life. So that is Marcus's message, and we're gonna jump into his podcast now in just a minute. Just a little quick little run here. If you guys have a effed up story of your own on the paranormal, we'd love to do a podcast on it and get it onto the official website. You can do that by visiting our official website, which is effedupstories.com. That's EFFEDUPSTORIES.com. Go to the menu, hit submissions, and fill out the form, hit submit. I'll get it on the website, and then we will get it into a podcast. And with that said, we're going to jump into Marcus's custom podcast. And by the way, I know Ryan already said thanks, and I didn't say it yet. So thank you, Marcus. For anybody who would like to know, Marcus donated a very generous $100 towards our new audio interface. So he really helped us get back on our feet. So you can all throw a round of applause Marcus's way, because it's thanks to Marcus and everybody else that we are able to keep doing these for you guys. So with that said, into the topic at hand. So I specifically looked for a story involving a strange disappearance involving aliens. And I came across a really cool and bizarre story, and it involves a man named Granger Taylor. And basically, I mean, to get an idea of who Granger is or was, he was a genius, specifically with mechanical devices. I mean, this guy could build, repair anything. And I mean, even from a young age, he was like a prodigy. And all throughout his childhood, he challenged himself to do bigger and greater things with his skills. But at some point, he found that, the only real challenge left for him was to create a flying saucer. Now, that's quite a lofty goal, right?
No doubt.
So, this is a very bizarre story, because at the end of it, he allegedly communicated with a race of aliens and then disappeared. And the story goes that, yes, he may have actually gone with aliens. So let's go right to the beginning. So when Taylor was born, he was born on October 7th, 1948, and he was actually born here in my country of Canada. And he was actually born in Vancouver, BC. So that's kind of close to where you are, Ryan.
Yep.
So Taylor was known to be eccentric, and that's kind of common among geniuses and very smart people.
Creative minds, yep, certainly.
Definitely. And, despite this, and this is common too, right? Because a lot of smart people, they drop out of school because it's not challenging, because it's boring, it's not important. And in such as the case with Taylor, he dropped out of school in grade 8, but everybody who knew him, said that he had amazing skills with building and repairing all things mechanical. And understanding his mechanical capability is really important when trying to understand Taylor and this whole story as a whole. So the first thing to point out with Taylor was that it's not like he was taught this by a father or a grandfather or an uncle. He was self-taught with all this mechanical ability. After he quit school, he actually got a job with a neighbor as an assistant mechanic. And he did this for a year until, after a year, he didn't need to be an assistant. He became self-employed, and he stayed self-employed doing this up until the day that he disappeared. But we really got to put it in perspective, just what he was capable of. So when he was 14 years old, he built a single-cylinder vehicle. I mean, he built it. 14 years old, he built a working single-cylinder vehicle. And again, he's self-taught, right? And he did such a good job of it that the vehicle was put on display at the Duncan Forest Museum. And then at 17, he rebuilt a freaking bulldozer, which by itself is an incredibly impressive feat. But this bulldozer in particular had been given up on by several older, very skilled mechanics. And yet here comes this 17-year-old self-taught mechanic and brings it back to life. This thing that everybody else gave up on. And then when Taylor was in his 20s, he found this rusted remains of an old locomotive in a dense forest, and it had been abandoned during the Great Depression. And Taylor actually cut a trail like over half a mile through this forest just so that he could drag back the engine that was in this husk of a machine. And within 2 years, Taylor had actually scavenged the rest of the needed parts and actually restored the train back to its original state. And it worked. He actually rebuilt a train, and he ended up selling it to the province of BC in 1973, and they sent it on tour with a museum for trains, and then they put it on display in the BC Forest Discovery Center. So, I mean, that blows my mind. But then as he got older, he needed to challenge himself further. So the next step was flying devices. So Taylor got his pilot's license, and he bought an old Kitty Hawk warplane. And then he restored it, and like every other piece of machinery that Taylor seemed to get his hands on, this also ended up on display. Eventually, he became even bored with flying devices. He was too smart. Nothing was challenging him anymore. And that was until he became aware of UFOs. And now we're going to see where the story starts to take a strange turn. So, Taylor had heard, all these different stories about the impossible ways that these UFOs allegedly flew. How could such a device dart in all these directions, hover, make no noise? How could a device travel such long distances through space? And this became Taylor's big and final challenge. It became his obsession. And not surprisingly, this is where everything just goes from normal to batshit crazy. So for Taylor, it all started with having an appropriate spot, a spot that he could think and really tune into what it was he was trying to achieve. So what he did was he took a half a year, and in his backyard he built a life-size UFO out of 2 satellite dishes, a bunch of different parts, and welding all the stuff together. And he even made a aluminum ramp door, and inside of it he put a couch, a wood stove, a TV, a large sofa, a stove, etc. And the whole thing sat on these metal pillars, so it was actually off the ground. And Taylor would spend a very large amount of time here just thinking, studying, trying to figure out what kind of power source UFOs use. I think that was his main question, was the power source. And sometimes, he would actually sleep in this place. This was his home away from home. He was just always there trying to crack this code and trying to figure out just all these mechanical mysteries revolving around this thing called UFO. And so, he started to devour every book he could find on UFOs, trying to glean anything that he could based on eyewitness accounts. Like, what could that tell him about how these things flew? He basically isolated himself inside this, makeshift UFO house, and, his obsession and dedication ended up coming to a head sometime after he allegedly got a message, apparently from space. So one day, Taylor confided in his friend Nielsen, and he said while he was lying down inside of his little UFO house, he made contact with an extraterrestrial entity via telepathic communication. And anyone who's up on the stories of alien encounters, they'll tell you that oftentimes, actually almost every case, is that the communication is telepathic. So that is the case for Taylor's story, and this is like back in the 70s, right? It's not like he was bombarded with media and everything like that to fill his head with what this is so he could come up with these ideas. So that's how he allegedly communicated, was telepathically. And he said the alien told him that he came from behind the Milky Way galaxy. And for the record, Taylor didn't actually see him. He was just communicating mentally with him. And Taylor also asked the alien questions telepathically. And chief among them was if the alien could tell him the power source for their UFOs. And apparently the only thing the alien would tell him is that it was magnetic. And I found that very interesting because, again, this is the 70s, and to talk about magnetic propulsion back then seems especially interesting to me. That's not something we really use today, except for I believe there's these train or bullet trains or monorails.
Maglev. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's the only thing I know of for sure that uses that. So it's still something. We've all seen it in documentaries. They theorize on the idea of magnetic propulsion, but it's not something that we normally see in we don't have aircraft that we know of that uses it or whatever. It's just those maglev trains, right? So again, from the 70s, that's an interesting point to me. And after Taylor had told his friend Nielsen about this, a couple days pass, and then Taylor has another experience, and he said, he apparently approached Nielsen, and he claimed that he had once again spoken with this alien entity. And apparently this time, the alien had actually invited him on a trip through the solar system. And of course, Taylor was extremely excited, and he said that, at the end of the month, the alien was supposed to contact him again, and he was to tell him where he needed to be picked up. So it was kind of like, at the end of the month, we need you at this very specific location. We're going to come pick you up. So he would know before then, I guess, to stop him from blabbing or telling anybody. So anyway, it was said to be, it was supposed to be a 42-month voyage through space. And, anybody who knew Taylor, they kind of chalked this up to a wild story. Taylor's an eccentric person. They assumed it was that, but at the same time, they kind of half believed it because he was also very credible. He was very smart. He was strange, yes, but it wasn't really in his character to come up with these.
He had all these practical skills that would, lead, give somebody a certain level of credibility.
Yeah, and he didn't really. He wasn't known to go around lying and coming up with tall tales. So there was a strange, it was a far-fetched idea, especially for anyone grounded, but at the same time, coming from him, it was kind of held some weight. It kind of made people sit on the fence. And so, that's where they were at that point. And then apparently, a week before Taylor did disappear, because he does, Taylor took all of his friends for a night out on the town, and as they refer to it as, a going away party. So a week after Taylor takes his friends out, Taylor sat down with his stepfather, and he had this real long discussion with him. Like a discussion you would probably have with somebody if you were terminally ill, you were dying. Things that you always wanted to say that you felt needed to be said, just in case you don't see him again. And, apparently Taylor was very affectionate. He thanked him for everything that he had done for him and so on. His mother, on the other hand, was on vacation, so he didn't get to talk to her. And unfortunately, this was, something that she apparently really regrets, even, up to the point that this story was written. She was very sorry that she wasn't home to have, to see him again. But anyway, Taylor prepared 2 wills, and oddly, he scratched out the word deceased on them and replaced it with the word departed. So he really didn't treat this as a death thing. He really, all signs kind of point to at least that he believed that he was going on this, trip through space. And the next
sounds like Heaven's Gate.
Yeah. But again, like, it's kind of strange coming from Taylor, but it gets even weirder. So the next night after Taylor has his heart-to-heart with his stepfather and he does up these wills, this is essentially Taylor's last night on Earth. And on this night, Taylor went to a restaurant that he often frequented. Everybody knew him there, and nobody remembered anything particularly odd about him within regards to, anything that he said or did, or, he didn't act out of character. The only thing that they kind of found odd when pressed was that, it was winter there. In particular, it was a very bad storm, and he really wasn't dressed for it. He sat there with a simple brown sweater, jeans, and lager boots. And they thought that was strange because, again, like, this was a night that was calling for a really, really bad storm, and he just it didn't match the weather at the time, right? And anyway, Taylor allegedly left around 6:30 p.m. and the storm had come in full force by then. It was hurricane winds. It had knocked out power lines, which was causing a blackout all over. Debris was being thrown everywhere, so it was really, really nasty. And then came the next day, and Taylor could not be found anywhere. It's as if he vanished off the face of the earth. And also strange was the note that Taylor left for his parents, which read, and I quote, "Dear Mother and Father, I have gone away to walk aboard an alien ship as recurring dreams assured a 42-month interstellar voyage to explore the vast universe, then return. I am leaving behind all my possessions to you as I will no longer require the use of any. Please use the instructions in my will as a guide to help. Love, Granger. So that was his message, and Taylor's stepfather called the police, and they checked the hospital. They checked to see if his passport had been used, all of his records, the usual hangout spots, just nothing. They couldn't find anything. So they put out a warning just in case, his name, his license got flagged anywhere, or his vehicle, anything that could flag him down anywhere. But I mean, even, 4 years later, they still hadn't found his car. They still hadn't found any sign of him. And, they had put ads in the papers offering rewards, but just nothing. However, there was a book by the name of Mysteries of the Unknown Alien Encounters that said 6 years later, after Granger had disappeared, they did find his truck on a mountain, and the truck had been blown to pieces by some kind of explosives. Now, this isn't official. This was just in that particular book, but it is worth mentioning. Now, there were pieces of a vehicle found smashed to pieces, apparently, but on the record, nobody knows if that has anything to do with Taylor or not. Now, when this happened, Taylor was 32 years old, and the real question is what actually happened to him, and there's all different kinds of theories as to what it could be. The first thing I think that jumps to everybody's mind is
suicide.
Yeah, could it be suicide? And
it certainly sounds like it in a lot of ways, even if, he didn't believe that he was committing suicide. Like, I mentioned the members of Heaven's Gate. He mixed up his little bottle of poisonous Kool-Aid and headed on up the mountain with some homemade explosives, blew his vehicle up with, or whatever the case is. But, there, that kind of a explanation, I think, while it may be the go-to explanation, I think it's also perhaps a bit of a lazy one.
Yeah, well, like the thing about that is, and I mean, immediately that's if I was looking for a grounded answer that could make sense, that was exactly where I was leaning, and I thought about it. I knew a guy that had schizophrenia. Actually, Ron, I think you knew. I'm not going to say his name.
Yeah.
And the day that he went to kill himself, and again, like he had schizophrenia, so everything is not. People who are aware of that know that there's some fantasies and stuff involved there. But the day that he had went to kill himself, he slipped a note into all of his closest friends' lockers, saying something to the effect that he was going on an adventure with Ryu, and he was referring to the character from those Street Fighter games, and nobody understood exactly what that meant. I mean, he was kind of an eccentric guy anyway, but one of his friends did, and he actually made a mad dash to try and find and save him. He knew where he was going and everything. He actually ran up there, but it didn't work. He actually told me, I spoke to him, and he said that when he had got there, because it was like it was kind of like in a wooded area, like you're downtown, and then there's a wooded area, not like really close by where they used to hang out. Everybody kind of used to hang out and drink and stuff. And he said he got there and he ran up the hill, and he said he called out to him, and he knew he heard him, and then he heard the shot, right? So that was pretty dramatic. But anyway, that's what it reminded me of, because this guy had this note, that he had put into everybody's locker, saying that he was going on an adventure with Ryu, similar to how I think with Taylor had he was going on an interstellar voyage with aliens, right? But as you said, it could be the UFO thing could be a metaphor for killing himself, could be, but in Ganger's case, they never did find a body. And, besides that book saying that they found that it was his car or his truck, the official statement wasn't that there was any ties to him at all. right? I mean, there's no official documentation saying that this was his truck or we found his body. Like, the truth is, nobody ever heard or saw tell of any sign of him being anywhere. Is it possible that he did disappear? And then the other, the other thing to point out is that by all accounts, he never had a drug or alcohol problem. He was super smart. And one thing that I did learn, throughout my life about anybody who's really smart, anything to do with intelligence really, is that the smarter people are, the more prone they are to depression and other mental illnesses, right? This is true for the creative genius types. It's like if somebody is really great at one thing, it's like they always have to have some kind of curse to balance it out. You see this all the time with, people with Asperger's, right? They're incredibly intelligent, but have very awkward social skills, or emotional, relating to emotions, or,
it all has to do with, brain resource distribution.
Yes,
you have a really good ability with numbers and that kind of thing, then that has to come
at the expense of something else.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And I think that's just nature's way of balancing us out. I've even seen cases where you have somebody who everybody would identify as someone having mental issues. You could say Down syndrome. You could say several different kinds of mental illnesses. But when it comes to certain things, like maybe they're like an insanely good creative painter or piano player or something. Like I'm not talking good. I'm talking better than the majority of people who does it. Like they're exceptional.
A savant.
Yeah, they're like at the peak of it. So it seems like you got the average person who's kind of somewhat balanced all through. That's what it's all about, right? That's what they say, balancing your brain or balancing the chemicals in your brain. Well, when they're not balanced, it's kind of like stepping on a seesaw. One end goes down, but the other end goes way up. So in some area, they might be exceptionally gifted. And in Ganger's case, it seems like he was super smart, probably kind of socially awkward, but he had friends. He was just eccentric. But at the same time, maybe he was suffering in silence about certain things. Maybe it was a suicide. We really don't know, but I do think there is something true to that phrase, ignorance is bliss. Because,
well, there's a couple of things about the story that are interesting, right? Here we have somebody who, by all accounts, is mechanical genius, an above average intelligent individual, who takes it upon himself to, construct a what is essentially a mock-up of an alien craft. Now, in all the studies and articles and videos and documentaries I've watched, one thing is clear, is that we really don't understand the motivations behind whoever's operating these extraterrestrial craft. We really don't even know if there's anybody operating them for sure, but there does seem to be quite a few stories that come out dealing with telepathic communication, contactees, and there seems to be, in some cases, certain individuals who are able to reach out just with their minds alone. Maybe there's something different about their brains, about their minds, about their mental state. Who knows? But there at least is I guess there's a precedent there. That this isn't the first time that we've heard of somebody being contacted, or in a way, I guess it's almost like he was reaching out by constructing this, and maybe there's a certain kind of mental dissonance that is created when a really intelligent person is sitting there and just imagine you've grown up your whole life, you've been able to build cars from scratch, and airplanes and bulldozers and whatever mechanical thing you put your hand on, and here you have this problem, this device that you're trying to construct that is literally a replication of something out of this world, and your all of your considerable intelligence, your above average intelligence, is being poured into this problem. What powers this thing? Perhaps there's something even in that process that is enough to capture the attention of one of these visitors, one of these watchers. The example that's used a lot, I guess, is the nuclear bomb, the atomic bomb, that when we first started detonating those, testing them, it seems like UFOs kind of took an interest. It was like, oh no, the kids found the fucking matches. It's
go time.
It's time. Yeah, it's time for us to go and take a look and watch over them. Maybe this is the equivalent of a mental or psychic A-bomb. This kid, this above average intelligent kid who's sitting there day after day, he works the problem out physically to the point that as far as he can go with it, right? Like, he builds a structure, he builds the interior, and now he's at the point where he's like, I need to create a power source for this. I need to somehow generate the motion that we see in the accounts and some of the grainy video that may have been available at the time. I don't know. But perhaps this process of him, just devoting all of his considerable mental powers and prowess at this problem was enough to create a bright flash in the darkness of space, where some passerby or watcher or visitor was like, hey, look at this guy, look at him go. He's working on it. He's almost there. Maybe we should go and chat with him. So I mean, at least in that realm, when I'm forced to kind of reason out if this did indeed happen, and it happened the way that it's presented as a mutual agreement for, it's not an abduction. Excuse me. It's a, hey, come with us, and yeah, sure, I will. Perhaps there's some precedent there to say that his considerable mind was enough to draw them in.
And there's also something to be said about the fact that he was focusing so strongly. I mean, he was obsessed with it. He sat in this UFO-shaped dome that he had built as a sanctuary, and he spent tons of time in there just focused and thinking. And you and I know how important focus is. I mean, that is such an important aspect of meditation, of magic, of even prayer, like miracles. When people focus on a particular outcome, and it seems to transcend religions, it transcends culture, beliefs. As long as people are focused on a specific thing, especially in greater numbers, the greater force of that belief or faith or focus, the greater possibility that outcome actually happens. So when you have a very strong mind, focused for so long, so strongly on a particular thing, perhaps that shot out like a beacon to the aliens. It made that.
Especially if they're, psychic beings who are in tune to this kind of thing.
Right. I mean, they could be just like how we have SETI down here scanning across the cosmos, trying to hear some kind of communication. Perhaps aliens do the same thing, but they know how to pick up on us mentally. Maybe that's how they choose who they're going to abduct, or they have a scanner and they're scanning through the millions of people here on Earth and trying to find something interesting, something worthwhile to them. To
billions,
right? But perhaps like they have some kind of way to single out the particular thought or the particular line of thinking or whatever it is that they're looking for. They have a way to scan through it and zero in on what they want. And once they find what they want, they actually come in and abduct the people and, whatever their agenda is, you know what I mean? Like,
oh, certainly. It definitely, I think if this did indeed happen the way that it is being presented, that, that seems to me to be the most likely scenario. They contacted him telepathically, which gives us at least an anecdotal evidence that, from his mouth, he said they contacted me telepathically. We spoke, we had a conversation. That, gives us what we need to know there, I guess, is that, they're capable of this amazing feat of reaching out with their mind. And, perhaps they have technology to match that natural ability of theirs. And like you said, they're scanning and looking, just kind of flicking through the radio dial, and every now and then a clear signal kind of pops through the static, and we got to go talk to this guy. He's above and beyond the normal people down there. He could be a benefit to us, or perhaps is a more beneficent thing where they just say, hey, like this is what you really want. We can see into your mind. We know that there's nothing else for you on this planet. You're just going to live a life of frustration. Once you come with us, we're going to go trip around the cosmos a little bit,
Or perhaps the smarter you are, the better you taste, and aliens like to eat people. So, they go fishing for the biggest brains they can make a pot of stew out of. Come
with us. We'd like to have you for dinner.
And, of course, the aliens that show up would be the ones from The Simpsons. But, Ron, you said that you came across a couple little interesting stories as well.
I did. But I think that this conversation would be greatly remiss if we didn't, at least in passing, mention the Travis Walton case.
The Travis Walton case. That's probably the most famous. And I'm just going to shoot this out there right now. For anybody who didn't watch the movie Fire in the Sky that was based on the Travis
Loosely.
It was loosely, but awesome movie anyway.
It was, and I can honestly say that it scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. Because I don't think, it came out, we were younger when it came out.
Oh,
anyway.
Man, that was like I thought it came out in the 70s.
Well, no, it happened in the 70s. The movie came out when we were younger.
It's still an older movie.
Yeah.
But
so I here's a story about 7 guys. They're loggers. These rough and tumble. They're all young men. I think the oldest of them was 29 years old. He was the crew foreman. They're up, cutting trees and thinning out the forest kind of thing, making their piles, and they head back for they're done for the day, so they head back, and while they're driving down this winding, mountain path, because they're up in these hills cutting the trees, they see this light in the sky and they think, shit, there's an airplane they crash in a tree and it's like on fire hanging in a tree. So a couple of guys jump out and they look, but they know right away this isn't an airplane. It's a flying saucer. And that's, I think, even before they got out, somebody was like, shit, it's a flying saucer. And at some point, for some reason, Travis gets out of the vehicle, crosses the road, and of course, this is all taking place in November 1975. Okay, where was it? The Apache Sitgreaves National Forest was the location. So, he hops out and walks across the road and going up through the woods, and there's a beam of light, is the traditional image, and according to his tale, he wakes up, he thinks he's in a hospital, lights overhead, and he's lying on this table, and then as he kind of gathers his senses, suddenly he realizes that he's surrounded by these non-human individuals.
And they look like Greys, at least the way they were portrayed in the movie were your typical Greys, right?
Yeah, and I do believe that is consistent with his description. Just imagine yourself waking up on this table and looking around, and you see these non-human individuals, a group of them, standing around you, staring at you, and what do you do? What's your I'm just I'm flicking through my notes here. I'm looking for the exact.
Well, it was like a medical table. They had like medical instruments, and they were performing different tests, I guess. But
yeah. So as he described them, he opens his eyes and he's just hit with the horror of what he's looking at. Right. You got these great big luminous brown eyes. He said the size of quarters. And there's 3 or 4 of them. They're dressed in these suits. They're just like the skin tight suit with no buttons or zippers or anything. He does describe them as having 5 fingers and 2 arms and 2 legs and that kind of thing. But one of the interesting things that those weren't like the only strange creatures that he ran into while being on this craft, because here we have a story of this guy. He's conscious, he's awake, he's looking for a weapon to defend himself. He sees all these strange instruments. He runs out of the room and down hallways, and runs into another room where there's a man sitting in a chair who I think he's like sitting in a chair, and he won't look at him or talk to him, and then he just like takes him by the arm and ushers him down the hallway into another room, and eventually gets brought back. So he's back on Earth. He describes this sensation of him floating down through the sky, and landing on this road. He's going past the trees. He lands on the road, runs and calls his sister. He finds there's a gas station, there's a payphone, calls his sister and tells him where he is. And when they pick him up, he's just babbling incoherently. They brought me back. And he's like, why do I have why am I so scruffy? Because for him it's moments. But in the end, he comes to find out he's been missing for 5 days. Now, I mean, I don't think it's necessary to get into all of the
Like the
get into all of the the details of the story. I mean, honestly, you just type in Travis Walton, go to his website, and like he's got the whole thing laid out there. But I've seen a lot of interviews with this guy, old ones right up until in the 2000s, within this last decade, and not only just with him, but I've read and seen several things about the other men, because originally, the authorities thought that there was a real hothead that
Oh,
was
yeah,
with them. They thought that he had killed Travis, right, and that they were covering up or whatever. And I do believe that several of these guys, as far as I know, or as I understand it, several of these guys took lie detector tests, and while I think one of them was inconclusive, the other two came back that everything they were saying was the truth.
Yeah.
Insofar as they understood it, and I think it underlies this kind of a phenomenon where, even where we have, like, we got 7 people involved in this, the guy disappeared for 5 days. He comes back and tells his wild tale. Meanwhile, the other 6 guys go back to town and they're like, holy shit, a UFO just took Travis. Travis reappears 5 days later saying, holy shit, a UFO took me, and there was aliens aboard, and I seen their equipment and their language, but still, it's such a shocking event, and not just to on an individual level, but this thing is such a culture shock that some people won't even go near it. Some people won't talk to you about it because it's so disrupting to their personal worldview. How terrifying is the concept that at any given moment, a super advanced spacecraft could just silently descend out of the blacky inkness of the sky and just scoop you up and make away with you. I mean, people are scared of being abducted by other humans. It's like, don't go jogging in the park, after dark. Somebody will grab you and you'll disappear into the bushes and no one will ever find you. Well, what's that compared to some big metal can flies over you, sucks you up, and then poof, you're gone. I mean, you can't even escape. There's no hope. It's not like, well, I'm kicking down this door and you're bringing me back. Like, go ahead and kick down the door. You get sucked out into space. Like, or kick the door open and find yourself on an alien planet, right? And that concept, I think, is so, it makes people so vulnerable that that's where the terror comes from.
Well, the scariest thing is the unknown, and with being abducted, they're so. I mean, okay, we got stories that have happened to people about being abducted, but they're not all the same. I mean, the truth is, you really have no idea. It could be anything. I mean, we even had this discussion before, like, perhaps in a black hole, time is different because there's such a gravitational force that, oh yeah, you get squat down to like nothing, but imagine if, with the dimension of time scrambled up, that whole process feels like a billion years. Imagine that excruciating pain for a billion years. And when you're talking about space, anything like that is possible. We really have no idea. Perhaps they have technology that to do surgery or to do very invasive things that is extremely painful. I mean, remember that picture? Like, we've all seen the cattle mutilations, but there's a picture of a guy, a human, who had been mutilated like that, where organs were,
I believe, from Brazil.
Yeah,
It was in Brazil, I believe.
Well, I'm not sure of the location, but if you Google it, you'll find it, and I believe
it's citation needed because it's gruesome.
Oh, definitely. Well, here's the thing, right? It's not just that parts of his body are very precisely taken out, like the nipples, and I think the asshole was cored out, like all this stuff, right? And the way that it happened, and when there was experts elaborating on how it was done and the injuries, and they said just like how it was done with the cows and stuff like that, the body parts were removed in such a way that he would have been alive to feel the whole thing.
Yes.
That's the scariest part, right? It was such precision that it avoided like the major arteries and the veins. There's like no blood, right? Very. We can't even do it. We don't have the technology to do what was done to this guy. And with the experts believing that he was conscious during the whole ordeal. I mean, that's terrifying. To think that could happen to you is terrifying.
It's one of those. It's one of those areas, where, seeing a ghost might frighten you. Seeing some being out in the woods and seeing a large hairy creature kind of step out from behind a rock, and you scream and run, it screams and runs, and sure, that would be terrifying. But perhaps you wouldn't spend too much time in the woods by yourself after that. But the human abduction phenomenon, and especially when it gets into the human mutilation phenomenon, which by far is much less talked about. It enters a new realm because the level of helplessness in the face of that kind of technology, and seemingly in the face, at least in the case of this, this human mutilation, in the face of such lack of emotion or empathy, that it's very likely that if this is a real thing, if human abduction and mutilation is a real thing, that they're collecting samples. They're sending a net down into a pond to see what kind of wriggling and squirming things they can pull up, and they got no compunction about slicing it open, vivisecting, and sticking pins in it to whatever ends, whether it's just cold scientific curiosity or perhaps even something darker than that. Now, other than Travis Walton, because I knew that there was no way that we could have this conversation tonight without mentioning the Walton case, and for anybody who doesn't know the story, I would definitely suggest. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on just the Walton experience, but I definitely suggest going and checking out his website. It's pretty simple, and he has he does have a book out, but I believe that he pretty much paraphrases the whole and condenses his whole book into several pages on his website. So it's definitely a very interesting read, and there is a little bit more to it than what we got into. But I think what we touched on is enough for this particular very specific subject matter. Now, I did come across another story. Interesting that a lot of these UFO stories seem to, or UFO disappearance stories that I came across, a lot of them involved aircraft.
Yeah,
and there's a famous one with a jet that gets scrambled. U.S. It's in, I believe it's in the UK. It gets scrambled to go and intercept. And this guy is like a very skilled, very skilled pilot who's been involved in actual confrontations in war, and This is during the Cold War, and so he flies out. They have some kind of contact that they don't know what it is. They think it's Soviets. So he goes out there and, he can't. He sees an object, and there starts following it, and then just disappears. Right. Now, eventually, they find the plane, and when they pull the plane up, there's no sign of him. There's no sign of his body. There's no indication. And then years later, somebody comes forward, and an anonymous person comes forward and says, yeah, here's transcripts of that event saying that it was a UFO. And then later on, the Ministry of Defense of the UK, the MOD, they put out their own transcripts saying, look, no, it wasn't exercise, and the guy got disoriented and crashed his jet, kind of a thing, and I wanted to get into this story like in great detail. I spent quite a bit of time watching videos and stuff on it. Only at the end of these videos and excuse me, these articles that I was reading, that categorically across the board that it's solved. It has nothing to do with UFOs and aliens. And likewise, I came across this other incident called the Valentich, I think is this guy's name. Happened in Australia, and the reason why I bring it up is because I there's a very short little transcript of the conversation. So it's this young man. He goes up in his airplane. He's got like 150 hours or something flying airplanes, so not a lot, not very skilled pilot. And he's flying, and the transcript begins with Valentich saying, "Is there any known traffic below 5,000 feet?" So the air traffic controller responds with no known traffic. Valentich, there seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000 feet. They respond with, what type of aircraft? I cannot confirm. It is four bright, it seems to me, like landing lights. The aircraft just passed over me at least 1,000 feet above. Air traffic controllers, Roger, is it a large aircraft? Confirm. So this goes back and forth, and I'm trying to identify this aircraft, and as it continues, this young guy Valentich is saying it's going around me, it's like orbiting me. I can't tell how large it is. It has a strange green light on it. I can't identify what kind of aircraft. Then there's, as the mission, or not mission control, it's not a spaceship, as the team on the ground is, they can't see anything on the radar, and they're trying to get more information out of them. And, he's saying now it seems like it's stationary. It's got this green light. It looks metallic. And the kids now, I would imagine, get a little panicky, and he comes on and says he's that it's approaching from the southwest, and that the engine of his aircraft is idling roughly. Then the whole thing just ends with, they're trying to get some more information out of him, asking him, like, what are you intending to do here? And he tells them that he's going to King Island, Melbourne. That strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. It's hovering, and it's not an aircraft. Then there's 17 seconds of silence. with the open microphone, but they apparently they record this audible, unidentified, and I've heard it described as like a metallic scraping, and then that's it. And they find no trace of this guy's airplane. They don't find a body wash up anywhere. There's no record of him landing at any of these airports. But there are eyewitnesses who state that they did see a strange green light flying around out over the ocean that night. And of course, these things got me thinking about what other than the Bermuda Triangle.
Well, I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like I actually watched that story reenacted on Unsolved Mysteries. It really
Very possible.
Really sounds familiar. If it's the one I'm thinking of, then
I'm not sure what year this took place. Oh, you know what? This was also in the 70s. It was in 79.
Well, the UFO phenomenon was very big in the 70s. It's almost like, if it were true, like, aliens discovered us and whatever, it seems like in the 70s, even though their technology then is still more advanced than we have now, but we could still spot them. They weren't as good at hiding. And now, I mean, I've seen videos where, supposed or alleged UFOs take on the form of a cloud.
Cloud, yeah.
And so if they were that far ahead then, I mean, they're way far ahead now, and there's videos of people with like third generation night vision goggles who film looking in the night sky, and there's just tons of UFOs seemingly whipping by. And then there's, I mean, even when we first met, Ryan, and you had that video where a certain way you blocked the sun with a piece of paper, and you could actually.
It was actually with like the eave of my shed.
Yeah, and you actually had a video, and I mean you could clearly see the UFO bipping and bopping around. I mean it was very easy to see. It wasn't even hard. And I mean, me, much to some people's I guess disgust, when they show me like pictures of ghosts and stuff they took. Like, if it doesn't jump out at me, if it's something that I can't rationally explain or something like that, I can't kind of endorse the idea.
No, well, we're open, but I'm not going to squint and poke myself in the eye to try to induce some kind of image in something that doesn't exist, and neither are you.
Right, and
we're looking for if it's there, it should jump out off of the page or off of the screen,
Right, and so some people, I guess because we do this show on the paranormal, and we're very open with the story. I mean, the thing is with the story, though, I'm not looking at evidence either. I'm taking the story at face value. When I'm given something of evidence, I do scrutinize it and look at it skeptically. Well, in a way, I look for it. I try to rule out all the possibilities, and if I can't do that, and I don't know what it is, then I'm intrigued, and I'll say, I can't figure out what this is definitely strange to me. But if I can figure out what I think is a logical explanation, that's kind of what I go with, because it can be, right? So when I see that stuff, I'm looking for something to jump out at me. And with your video, though, it did. Like, it's not like I had to squint. I didn't have to, try to believe it or try to see what it was. Or I can't think of any possible rational explanation for what that could have been. There's just no. I mean, even now, with knowing everything I know now and everything I've seen, everything I've heard, I still can't make sense of what that was. Right?
So, there does seem to be a greater reality here that does include the existence of unidentified flying objects. We don't know exactly what they are. We don't know if they're natural. but there's something in the skies that people are capturing. Nowadays is very difficult, of course, because of all the fakery, and somebody makes a really really good fake video of a UFO just to add to their profile for oh, look how good I am with Adobe. I can create these really realistic things. But I think at this point, and it's funny you should say that, that a lot of this was really prevalent in the 70s, because, what happened just the year before, 1969, right? Landed on the moon.
Yeah.
And then all through the 70s, there's this flap, I guess is the term that's being bandied about these days, of UFO sightings and experiences. Before that, there was, the whole contactee. I'm not going to say movement, but there was a definitely an outpouring of individuals who claimed to have been contactees. But at the very least, I think at this point, now we're in 2016, decades later, that there is a phenomenon. There's a real thing that's happening here. That's unequivocal in my mind. Now, I'm willing to look at all different kinds of explanations for what this is, but I think that no matter what that explanation is, that it's something interesting, something fantastic, and it could be something terrifying, and I think the alien abduction, especially in the case of, we hear lots of abduction stories, but of course those who disappear and are never heard of again, they can't tell us their stories.
No.
We just have the few instances where, shit, that was the one that got away, from the aliens' perspective. That Travis Walton, we really we were really looking at making a good mincemeat pie, but he managed to wriggle his way out and get back to Earth. However that he managed it with the help of these individuals on the ship with him. But I think the whole thing, maybe it's possible that what we're talking about here tonight is just just a little glimpse through the keyhole, as it were, into a greater phenomenon. The number of people that go missing just in North America, right? And once you start adding in, the rest of the westernized world, you throw in Europe and Australia and New Zealand, and you start adding up the number of disappearances, it's staggering. And maybe some of those are attributed to Bigfoot, or some of those are attributed to kidnappings, right, and people just disappearing.
Yeah, you got kidnappings, you got murderers, you got serial killers, you got people getting lost in the woods, you got, did I say suicides? You got a lot of stuff, but if we're gonna believe,
maybe David Pallades is doing some of this.
Yeah, to write new books. It's like, we need more people disappearing. I can't write books on nothing, right? So, right. It's very possible. From everything that we've heard, there's just too many damn stories to
just discount it.
Yeah, there's just way too many stories to say that there's not an alien aspect as well, because there's. Like you said, a lot of stories involving aircraft. In fact, that's one of the things I remember most about, because I bought the whole season, or the whole series of Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah.
And on the UFO season, because they kind of banded all like the UFOs together and the ghosts together. Anyway, the UFO ones is 4 discs, and there was a lot of episodes that involved aircraft and like military bases and stuff like that, right? So
for all the abductees, and at this point we're there's got to be well over 1 million different people who have claimed to have been abducted. How many people never, if all those are legitimate, or even a percentage of those are legitimate, what percentage never come back?
Well, that's just it, right? I mean,
we'll never know for the most part, but we have just a few little instances where we get to follow this person, their disappearance, their descent into the abyss. We get to follow them right up to a certain point, and then poof, they're gone.
Right. And I mean, like you said, there's a lot of, I would say most cases we'll never hear about. They're disappeared. I mean, I'm sure there's records at the police station, but logically they're looking at it like someone stole them, someone killed them.
It's a missing person, which in itself is not a crime.
Exactly. So, there's the possibility that there's a percentage of these that are, I mean, hell, I saw a UFO, right? I mean, I'm not going to tell that story again, but I saw one, and I live in a fairly small place. It's not like, I mean, yeah, we do the show and I read lots of stories, I get lots of stories, but it's not like I've had a lot of stuff happen to me in my life, but I did see a UFO, and my wife saw it, and we're both 100% sure that it wasn't something that, it wasn't a man-made aircraft that we've seen before, so, or on TV. So if I could see one in this little remote, tiny place, how can I discount this giant world and all the different people in it who see so many different things, right?
Precisely. Hundreds of thousands of people at this point.
Right. So with that said, Marcus, that is our custom podcast to you. I do hope you enjoyed it, and again, thank you so much for your very generous donation.
And thanks for the topic, because it really is something that we haven't covered before, and it's something that obviously really deserved some kind of coverage.
It was a fantastic topic, and next week we'll be doing the second custom podcast, and that one is going to involve, she said, something with satanic culture, black magic. So I got a couple things I'm picking around with researching right now, but that should be another really interesting custom podcast because, well, hell, I mean, how many awesome stories do you get out of those two things? I mean, whether it's just satanic cults or just black magic, I mean, chances are we're going to find something with both. So,
and it was just this Christmas that the Aleister Crowley house on the shores of Loch Ness in Scotland burned to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, someone sent me a link to that. So definitely we'll have that next week, and we'll probably have another couple episodes up this week, but not the research ones, because obviously we got to spend a little bit of time at that to do it justice. But we do have some new submissions, and I got to say, it's not online yet, only because there was a problem with my web host, but I got a really weird, it's a short but disturbing story that we got to cover sometime very soon. So with that said, if you guys got your own effed up story that you'd like to get on the website and into a podcast, please submit that to us, which you can do at our official website, which is effedupstories.com. That's EFFEDUPSTORIES.com. Go to the menu, hit submissions, fill out the form, hit submit, and we'll get it out there. And with that said, thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.